The dust on the long western road had barely settled when Clara stepped down from the mail coach, her breath catching as pain shot through her arm, tightly wrapped in white bandages that were already beginning to fray at the edges. The journey had taken weeks, across rivers, open plains, and unforgiving weather, and every mile had tested her resolve. She had not imagined her arrival would be like this. Not wounded, not exhausted, and certainly not standing in front of a man who looked at her with equal parts concern and disbelief. Jonah Hale, the rancher who had agreed to marry a woman he had never met, stood frozen for a moment before instinct took over. He reached for her carefully, his rough hands gentler than she expected, steadying her as if afraid she might disappear if he let go. Clara had rehearsed this moment countless times in her mind, but nothing prepared her for the silence between them. The letter exchanges had been polite, hopeful even, yet distant. Words on paper could not capture the weight of reality. Jonah was taller than she imagined, his face worn by sun and responsibility, eyes sharp but kind. He said her name softly, testing it, and she nodded, suddenly overwhelmed by how final this step felt. When he noticed the bandages more closely, his brow furrowed. She tried to explain, her voice trembling as she spoke of the accident, how the wagon wheel had snapped on a rocky descent, how she had fallen hard, how the town doctor had done what he could with limited tools. Jonah didn't interrupt. He simply listened, jaw tight, anger not at her but at the world that had hurt her before she even reached his door. The ranch was quieter than Clara expected. Wide fields stretched toward the horizon, broken only by fencing and the occasional tree bent by years of wind. Jonah helped her inside the house, moving slowly, always watching her face for signs of pain. The home smelled of wood and coffee, simple and lived in, a place built more for survival than comfort. That night, as the sun burned red before sinking into the land, Jonah rewrapped her arm with care he didn't know he possessed. His hands trembled slightly as he worked, aware that this woman, this stranger, had entrusted her future to him despite arriving broken and vulnerable. Clara noticed the tension and smiled faintly, realizing that beneath his tough exterior was a man just as unsure as she was. Days passed, measured by small moments rather than grand gestures. Clara learned the rhythm of the ranch while her arm healed slowly. Jonah adjusted his routine without complaint, taking on extra work she could not yet help with, though she insisted on doing what she could. They spoke over meals, about their childhoods, their losses, and the reasons that had led them to choose a marriage born of letters rather than love. Clara admitted she had been running from a life with no prospects, where every door had closed quietly but firmly. Jonah confessed that loneliness had crept into his bones after years of silence and empty rooms. Each conversation stitched something fragile but real between them. One afternoon, a storm rolled in without warning. Thunder cracked across the sky as rain battered the land, and Clara, startled, slipped on the porch steps. Jonah caught her just in time, pulling her close to steady her. For a moment, neither moved. Rain soaked them both, and Clara became suddenly aware of how safe she felt in his arms. Jonah felt it too, the shift, the unspoken understanding that what had begun as duty was becoming something deeper. He released her slowly, as if afraid of crossing a line too soon, but the air between them had changed. As weeks turned into months, Clara's arm healed, though a faint ache lingered, a reminder of the road she had traveled. She grew stronger, more confident, laughing more freely as she found her place on the ranch. Jonah watched her with quiet pride, amazed at her resilience. When he finally asked her if she regretted coming, Clara answered without hesitation. She said the journey had broken her body, but it had saved her heart. Jonah realized then that love did not always arrive whole and perfect. Sometimes it came wounded, carried across miles of dust and doubt, asking only for patience and care. On a clear morning at sunrise, Jonah stood beside Clara at the edge of the fields, the land glowing gold before them. He took her healed hand, this time without fear, and she squeezed back, grounding him. Their marriage had not begun with romance or celebration, but with compassion and trust, stronger foundations than either had dared hope for. Together, They faced the wide, uncertain future, knowing that whatever storms lay ahead, they would meet them side by side, not as strangers bound by letters, but as partners bound by choice.